6 a.m. to 7 a.m., hour 1. Good morning, Pine Ridge. You're tuned to KPRX 670 a.m. I'm your host, Tom Harlow, and it is 6 o'clock on the dot on this fine, frosty Thursday morning. If you're just rolling out of bed, welcome back to the world. If you have already been up for an hour, like I have, you have my sympathy and my respect. Let's start with the basics. Right now, in town, we're sitting at about 23 degrees. If you're up in the hills or driving the pass this morning, you were looking at more like 15. So if you were thinking of going out in just a hoodie and bravery, I'd recommend at least a real coat. High today should land around 40, maybe 41 if the sun decides to be kind. Forecast says partly cloudy later on. No new snow on the way for today. The plows got their workout yesterday, so they're probably sleeping in. Roads around town are mostly clear. There's still some black ice reported near mile marker 72, that shady corner that always freezes first because the sun apparently owes it money. So if your commute takes you through there, keep the speed down and the radio up. All right, we've got a full show this morning. We'll talk about the library's book drive, the high school pancake breakfast, and I might even read that very passive-aggressive flyer from the laundromat bulletin board, if I feel brave enough. But first, let's wake up gently. I'm going to put on a track to ease you into the morning, and then we'll get into the news. And welcome back to KPRX. It is 6:07. I hope that track helped you remember which way is up. Let's do a quick round of local notes before we peek at the wider world. The library is holding their winter book drive starting at 9 this morning. If you've got any old paperbacks gathering dust, especially kids' books, they'd love to have them. They promise not to judge your taste in mystery novels. I'm not sure I believe them, but that's their official stance. School board meets tonight at 6:30 in the usual place. Top of the agenda is adding 2 new buses and patching up the gym roof, which has been dripping on the visiting team's bench. Some people think that's strategic. I am told it's not intentional. Myrtle's Diner is doing their early bird breakfast special until 8:30. That's 2 eggs, bacon or sausage, toast, and hash browns for a price that looks like it's from the 90s. If you go, tell Myrtle that Tom sent you, and she will absolutely not give you a discount, but she might roll her eyes less when you ask for extra syrup. All right, that's the local housekeeping to start the morning. Now, I am looking at the national newswire here, and it is mostly the usual. Markets up a bit yesterday. President planning another infrastructure speech, some weather out east. And there is a tiny little note here. Let me scroll. Yes, a small bulletin about Penn Station in New York City. It says medical personnel are responding to an incident on one of the subway platforms. Some service delays. That's all it says. No details? No big alarm bells. If you've ever seen those national wires, you know they'll send you a bulletin if a squirrel looks at someone funny in Times Square. So I'm not going to make too much of that yet. Could be anything from a sick passenger to someone slipping on the stairs. I'll keep an eye on it. If it turns into something worth your attention, I'll let you know. For now, our main concern is not falling on the sidewalk out front. Let's roll another song while I refill my coffee, and then we'll take some calls if you've got birthdays, anniversaries, or road reports. And we're back on KPRX. It is 6:17 on your Thursday. I'm Tom, you're you, and we are collectively deciding to face the day. Let me hit weather again for folks just tuning in. 23 in town, about 15 up top. Roads mostly clear with the usual icy suspects in the shade. High around 40. Maybe a touch more, if the sun gets ambitious. No snow in the immediate forecast today. Phone lines are open if you've got something to share. Lost dog, found cat, birthday, or you just want to tell me your car wouldn't start. The number is the same as always. If you don't have it memorized yet, you haven't lived here long enough. Let's see who we've got. Good morning. You're on KPRX with Tom. Morning, Hank. I knew it was you. You're the only one awake enough to dial before 6:30. County 12, all right? Where exactly? By the old logging road turnoff? Yeah, that curve loves to pretend it's a skating rink. Folks, if your commute takes you down County 12, past the old logging road, Hank says it's slick as glass this morning. He nearly put his truck sideways there, and he has more experience driving in winter than most of us have being alive, so take that seriously. Thanks, Hank. You hauling up to Clearview again today? Uh-huh. Well, take it slow, and if anything else looks bad out there, give me a ring back. You know the deal. All right. That's your unofficial, highly reliable early morning road report, courtesy of Hank the Truck. Let me just check that National Wire again real quick while I've got you. It still has that little Penn Station note, but it has been updated. It now says subway delays due to a medical incident involving multiple passengers. Still very vague. No cause, no official statement, nothing like that. Now, if you've ever lived in or near New York, you know that medical incident involving multiple passengers could be anything from food poisoning at the hot dog cart to someone deciding to impersonate a goat in the wrong place. So, again, nothing to panic about, and certainly nothing that affects us directly out here. But it is something I'll keep an eye on for those of you who've got kids, grandkids, cousins, exes, enemies, or anyone else living back there. All right, I'm going to put on another track. When we come back, I've got the story of a very opinionated note somebody put up at the laundromat, which I think is the purest form of local politics. And welcome back to your morning here on KPRX. It is 6:31. If you're just stumbling into the kitchen, that is your cue to turn on the coffee maker and the radio in whatever order you prefer. I promised you a laundromat story, and I'm a man of my word. Someone put up a note on the bulletin board that says, and I quote, "Whoever keeps leaving one sock in machine number 3, you are driving me insane. Please seek help." No name, just rage and a Sharpie. If that's you, congratulations, you have successfully gotten into someone's head. I'm tempted to read that every morning until the culprit confesses. All right, let's take a quick spin through local events coming up this weekend. Saturday, you've got the high school pancake fundraiser starting at 8. All you can eat pancakes for $10 a head. Proceeds go to the band program so they can afford instruments that are younger than the students. I'll be there eating my weight in carbs and trying to pretend I'm helping. The community center is hosting a movie night on Friday. Family friendly, they say, although last time they picked something from the 80s that traumatized at least 3 children and 2 adults. This time I'm told it's animated and safe. And if you're in the mood to volunteer, the food bank is always happy to see you. They're especially short on people who don't mind lifting boxes and stacking shelves. Okay. Now, let me glance back at that national feed, because it has beeped at me again. All right. That little New York subway story has another sentence added. Now it reads, several passengers on a subway platform at Penn Station began behaving erratically and violently, resulting in minor injuries and significant delays. EMTs on scene. That's a quote. Erratically and violently. That's a little different from someone fainting. Again, it's New York, 8 o'clock in the morning, their time right now. People behave erratically there, just as a hobby. But The Wire doesn't usually use the word violent unless there's something more to it. I'm not going to jump to any wild conclusions. One messy incident in a massive train station does not a national crisis make. But that does push this story from ignore into keep watching. If any of you have family heading through New York this morning, maybe send a quick text like, "You okay? Train's on time?" That's just good practice whenever something weird hits the wires. Meanwhile, here in Pine Ridge, our trains remain imaginary, And our biggest transit problem is still the stoplight on Maple that can't decide if it wants to blink or work properly. We'll keep an eye on the big city while we play you some more music out here in the mountains. Let's throw on another track, and I'll be back with a full weather check at the top of the hour. 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., hour 2. It is 7 o'clock here on KPRX 670 AM. If you've just joined us, good morning. If you've been with me since 6, congratulations, you're doing better than my coffee supply. I'm Tom Harlow, and we're going to keep you company through your morning. Let's reset the basics for folks who just tuned in. Current temperature in town is now climbing slightly, sitting around 25 degrees. If you're up higher, still under 20. Roads are improving, but we've got reports of lingering ice out on County 12, near the old logging road curve, thanks to Hank, making sure none of you wipe out there. High today, around 40. Partly cloudy, no big storms headed our way. Honestly, in terms of weather, it's a pretty boring day, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. Locally, everything is operating on time. Schools are open, buses are rolling, Myrtle's is cooking, and if you left your wallet at the gas station last night, it's sitting behind the counter because Frank knows you and knows you'll be back. Now, for those of you who've been hearing me mention it, there is an unusual little story brewing in New York City this morning. I want to be very clear before I go any further. This is not something that affects us out here right now. But we're not an island, and some of you have people there, so it deserves a minute. The latest from the National Newswire about Penn Station reads as follows. I'm going to quote it so I don't exaggerate or downplay anything. Quote, multiple individuals on a subway platform at Penn Station began acting erratically and violently during the morning rush, attacking other passengers and responding emergency personnel. At least a dozen injuries reported. Service partially suspended while authorities secure the scene. End quote. That's unusual. We get the words attack and injuries often enough, but usually with larger context like fights, robberies, protests gone bad. This is being framed as something people are calling a medical incident, which is the part that doesn't sit neatly in any box I know. Now, before you start wondering if this means there's some kind of outbreak or anything dramatic like that, I'll remind you, it's one location in one massive city. There are 100 different ways this could be something more ordinary than it sounds. But I'm also not going to pretend it's nothing. Violent behavior that's being described as medically related is interesting, and not in the fun way. What I'm going to do is keep an eye on these wires, keep an eye on the TV news feed here in the studio, and if anything crosses the line from odd to important, I'll bring it straight to you. In the meantime, we still have lost cats and found dogs and birthdays to get through. Phone lines are open. If you've got a birthday shout-out, now's a good time to call. Good morning. You're on KPRX with Tom. Hey there, Lisa. How are you this morning? Your boy turns 8 today? All right, what's his name? Tyler. And he's probably still asleep, but that's okay. We'll embarrass him later when someone plays this back. Tyler, if you hear this later, your mom says happy birthday, she's proud of you, and you're not allowed to grow up any faster. Also, I am under strict instructions to remind you to feed the dog before you open any presents. Thanks for calling, Lisa. You have a good one. All right. Happy birthday to Tyler and to anyone else turning 8 or 80 or anywhere in between today. I'm going to play a song in his honor, and then we'll see if the world outside our valley has decided to calm down or get weirder. And welcome back. It is 7:22. For those of you keeping score on your morning routine, that means you should probably be brushing your teeth if you need to be at work by 8. And if you work from home, you are officially allowed to still be in pajamas. I'm taking another look at the national news situation. So far, that Penn Station story is still front and center on the feeds, but it hasn't jumped beyond that yet. However, there's a second line here now. It says kind of unconfirmed reports of similar disruptive passengers at two other subway stations are being investigated. Now, unconfirmed reports is journalist code for this might be nothing. It might be two people on social media freaking out. It might be rumors bouncing around like ping pong balls. But it's enough to suggest that this isn't one single drunk guy causing a scene. Something is making multiple people behave in similar ways in the same city, around the same time. The question is that a string of coincidences, or does it have a common thread? I don't know yet, and personally, I'm not going to slap the word outbreak on anything until someone with more letters after their name than I have decides to use it. I will say this, though. If you've got family in New York, and a lot of people do, today is a good day to check in on them. Not in a panicked way, just in a, hey, heard there was some nonsense on the subway. You good? Kind of way. That's never a bad idea. All right, let's talk about something a little closer to home for a minute. The Pine Ridge Food Bank is looking for volunteers this afternoon from 3 to 5. If you're off work early, or retired, or just feeling useful, they would love a hand restocking shelves. You don't need any special skills beyond the ability to lift a box and not eat all the cookies you're stacking. Their coordinator asked me to say that, so I assume someone has been doing that. Okay, I'll throw on another track here, and when we come back, I want to talk for a minute about how the high school is trying to raise money for new instruments without selling more wrapping paper, and I think that alone is worth celebrating. And we're back on KPRX. It is 7:39 in the morning, and I am pleased to report that my coffee is now at drinkable temperature. High school band news. Instead of doing the usual door-to-door sales of things none of us actually need, the band boosters are organizing that pancake breakfast I keep mentioning, plus a used instrument sale. If you've got an old trumpet, clarinet, violin, or whatever gathering dust in a closet, you can donate it or sell it on consignment. They'll refurbish what they can and put kids behind real instruments instead of plastic toys. If you want details, the school's got a post up on their site, or you can swing by the office and pick up a flyer. I think it's a smart idea. Better than buying another roll of neon wrapping paper that ends up in the back of a drawer. Now, I know some of you are messaging me about New York. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying not to turn this into a drama hour. Let me give you what I know as of right now. As of 7:40 here, 9:40 back east, the story is this. Several subway platforms, starting with Penn Station, have had incidents where people suddenly became aggressive and attacked other passengers. There are injuries, some serious. There are scenes of police trying to hold people back, EMTs trying to restrain people who look like they don't know where they are. The key thing I'm not seeing yet is the word why. No one is saying why this is happening. No mention of gas leaks, no mention of chemicals, no mention of some kind of mass panic event. Just erratic, violent behavior and medical incident. That gap between what's happening and why it's happening is the part that's making my antennae twitch a little. But again, this is one city, thousands of miles away. Life here in Pine Ridge is proceeding exactly as it did yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. What I can do for you is keep watching, keep filtering, and keep you informed without turning this into a horror show. That's the plan. In the meantime, let's not forget there's more going on in the world than one messy story. I know it's tempting to stare at the car crash, but somebody's still got to drive the other lanes. I'm going to put on another track. Stay with me. We'll navigate all this together. Welcome back to KPRX. It is 7:47, and if you're hoping the roads have magically cleaned themselves since you woke up, they sort of have. Temperatures are nudging up just enough to soften some of the frost. But we still have slick spots out on County 12 and the shady sections of the pass. Nothing surprising, nothing dramatic. Just winter reminding us it's not done with us yet. I've been getting more messages about the situation in New York. Let me take a minute here to summarize again, and I promise I'm not going to keep pounding on this every 5 minutes unless something genuinely new comes in. As of right now, here are the facts as best as I can gather them. Penn Station was the first scene where several commuters started acting violently for reasons still unknown. EMTs responded, police responded, platforms were shut down. Then a couple of similar reports popped up at other stations. Again, we don't know if those are connected or if it's a case of the internet spinning up before the facts do. What I am seeing is an update from the Associated Press. Quote, hospitals in Manhattan have admitted a number of patients exhibiting severe agitation and confusion following multiple disturbances on the subway system. Authorities have not yet identified the cause. End quote. There's a phrase in that sentence that sticks with me, and not yet identified the cause. Normally, with something like drug overdoses or chemical exposure or a medical emergency, you'd see that phrased differently. You'd get something like, authorities believe X may be involved, or initial indications suggest, and then a guess. Right now, we've got nothing but description without explanation. And for a journalist, even a small-town radio guy like me, that's the part that rings the little bell in the back of the brain that says, "Hey, pay attention, but don't panic." So that's what we're doing. Let me check something real quick here on the TV monitor. Okay, I've got one of the national morning shows on mute. They're showing a lot of flashing lights in Midtown, but I don't hear anything useful. I'll unmute it during the break and see if they're saying anything that makes sense. While we're waiting for more information, let's not forget our own business here in Pine Ridge. The farmers market is still happening on Saturday morning. Yes, I know it's cold. They do it indoors this time of year. Yes, there will be hot cider. And if you go early enough, you can beat me to the kettle corn, because once I get to it, I don't stop. I've got another track lined up for you, and when we return, I'll give you the latest AP update, because it looks like another one just came through. And we're back. Time now is 7:59, almost 8 o'clock. If you're heading out the door for work, grab your gloves, drink half your coffee so you don't spill it in the driveway, and remember that if you forget your lunch today, Myrtle's Diner will happily feed you and pretend not to judge. All right. Here is the brand new bulletin from AP. This one is longer than usual. Which, well, let's just say they don't write long bulletins unless they think they need to. I'm going to read this one carefully. Quote, New York emergency services are responding to multiple disruptive incidents across Manhattan, primarily in and around subway transit hubs. Eyewitnesses report groups of individuals exhibiting sudden violent behavior, including attempts to bite or scratch bystanders. Authorities have not established a cause, but preliminary assessments suggest a rapidly developing medical or neurological condition. City officials are urging commuters to avoid affected areas. End quote. Okay, there's a lot in there, so let's break it down without speculating. 1. They're now saying groups of individuals, not just one or two people. 2. They're using the words sudden and violent again, and now bite or scratch. I don't want anyone jumping to conclusions. People bite during panic attacks, drug reactions, seizures, mental health crises. But that's definitely a detail no newsroom likes typing. 3. Rapidly developing medical or neurological condition. That sounds like they don't know anything yet. It also tells me they're taking this seriously. And 4. The city is urging commuters to avoid certain areas. That's the first hint of something shifting from isolated weirdness to a public advisory. Now, I have to repeat this. This is all happening in New York City. Everything here in Colorado is perfectly normal. Schools are open, roads are stable, and the most dangerous thing happening here right now is someone trying to make a U-turn on Main Street without signaling. I'm not fearful. I'm not asking you to be fearful, but I am watching this closely. All right. Deep breath. We're going to play a track. When we come back, we're going to zoom out for a second and talk about something happy, like those puppies that showed up at the shelter last night. And then we'll check again if New York has calmed down or keeps getting stranger. Stay with me. 8:14 a.m. Welcome back to your Thursday morning on KPRX. It is 8:14. Let's take a little breather from the madness of New York and talk about something lighter. The animal shelter posted last night that they've got a batch of new puppies. And before you ask, yes, they are ridiculously cute. Yes, they will all find homes within about 5 minutes. And no, I cannot adopt all of them, no matter how much the staff tries to guilt trip me. I already have one dog, and he barely tolerates sharing my house with me. If you want to take a look, they put photos on their site. Be warned, you will fall in love with at least one, and your significant other may ask questions when you show up at home with a surprise. All right, before I get myself in trouble, let me check the news wires again. I promise I'm not going to obsess over this New York thing, but I also know you're all hearing the same rumors online, and it doesn't help to ignore the elephant in the room. Okay, we have an update from Reuters this time. Reuters doesn't do drama, so this is worth paying attention to. They say, quote, Midtown hospitals are activating surge protocols in response to an unexpected influx of patients displaying acute aggression and apparent disorientation. Officials have not linked the cases to any known substance or environmental factor. End quote. That's actually more concerning than the previous bulletins because when hospitals activate surge protocols, that's usually for mass casualty incidents, flu spikes, or large-scale accidents. You don't do that for 3 weird people on a platform. I'm not saying this is an epidemic or anything like that. We don't have enough information. But the words I'm seeing are not the usual morning news. Let me also add this. The mayor's office still has not issued a formal statement. That could mean they're collecting information, or it could mean they're trying not to cause a panic. Neither explanation is unusual. I'll let you know the moment someone at the city level says something concrete. Let's go back to music for a moment. I want to clear my head and give you all a chance to breathe. I'll check the OP and Reuters wires again during the song. 8:27 a.m. And welcome back. Time now is 8:27. If you're commuting, watch that sun glare coming over the ridge. It's at the perfect angle to blind you just as you're turning left onto Main. All right, here's what I've picked up during that break. 2 small details, nothing earth-shattering, but I'm going to pass them along because context matters. 1, several of the morning TV shows back east have cut into their usual celebrity interviews to cover this subway situation. They don't seem to know much more than we do, but the fact that they've shifted focus tells me this isn't fading away like a normal transit disruption. And 2, social media, which is usually a mess, is even more of a mess right now. Videos are popping up of people running out of stations, some clips of what look like scuffles, and a few that I'm not willing to describe on air because I can't tell if they're real or staged or misinterpreted. It's too chaotic to trust. So again, we rely on verified wires until someone official steps up with a statement. I'm being asked by a listener here, if I think this is terrorism. That's a fair question given the context. And my honest answer is, nothing I've seen so far indicates terrorism. No claims of responsibility, no mention of explosives or weapons, no targeted locations, and the behavior described, people acting confused, aggressive, biting, does not fit the typical pattern of coordinated attacks. If anything, it sounds more like something biological or medical, but even that is pure speculation. And I'm not going down that road without someone credible pointing in that direction first. All right, it's 8:32. Let's keep the music going. I'll check wires and local messages, and we'll regroup in a few. 8:48 a.m. You're listening to KPRX. It is 8:48. Thanks for sticking with me this morning. It's turning into one of the stranger ones we've had in a while, at least in terms of national news. Let me do our due diligence and remind everyone. Here in Pine Ridge, everything is fine. Absolutely fine. I just watched a guy walk by the station window wearing shorts, which either means he's very optimistic about spring or he's lost a bet. But either way, life goes on. Now here's the newest update from AP. It's short but important. Quote, NYPD has temporarily closed several subway entrances in Midtown and imposed restricted access to some street blocks as a precaution. City officials urge residents to remain calm and avoid speculation as investigations continue. End quote. That word, restricted access, tells me they're treating this as something potentially expanding, not just a one-off. I'd love to tell you this is all going to be cleared up in an hour. And someone will say, oh, it was a gas leak on track 12. Or someone dropped a suitcase full of fireworks. But the longer the silence stretches without explanation, the more I think this is going to run into the afternoon. And since it is 8:49 here, nearly 11 back east, we're getting close to the point where morning becomes midday, and officials will have to say something. They can't hold a press conference at dinner time for something happening at rush hour. All right, let's do one more song before the 9 o'clock hour, and then I'll give you a full recap of what we know, what we don't know, and what's probably nonsense. 1:02 p.m. And welcome back. If you're just joining us after the lunch rush, this is KPRX 670 AM. I'm Tom, and it's feeling downright mild outside now. Still cool, but at least the wind has stopped trying to rearrange our faces. For folks who weren't listening earlier, New York had a rough morning. Subway disruptions, people behaving violently and incoherently, hospitals filling up with patients showing some kind of neurological disturbance. As of an hour ago, officials were calling the situation contained, patients sedated, streets partially reopened, no new cases reported. That was the story at noon. And I wanted to believe that was going to be the story the rest of the day. So far, the wires have been quiet for about half an hour. That's usually a sign things are either stabilizing or brewing. I'm hoping stabilizing. We'll see. Let's put on a track here while I check the governor's page one more time. 1:10 p.m. All right, it's 1:10. I've been watching several feeds at once, wires, TV, and a couple official social media channels. And here's the interesting thing. Everyone is quiet. You might think, Tom, isn't that good? And normally it is. But after a situation like New York just had, when things go quiet too abruptly, it means the agencies are regrouping, either to prepare a more detailed statement, or because the situation is changing and they're confirming facts before speaking. I'm not sounding an alarm. I'm just telling you the patterns I've learned over the years. Nothing new yet, but silence is sometimes its own kind of update. Let's take a couple of local calls here. We could all use a break from the national noise. Good afternoon. You're on KPRX with Tom. Oh, hey, Karen. Yes, I did see the cookies you left at the station door. And yes, they're gone. If anyone wants to know who took the last one, it was me. I have no shame. Oh, your sister lives in Queens. She says everything is quiet now? Good. That matches what we're hearing officially. Sounds like the worst is over for the moment. Thanks for calling, Karen, and thank you again for the cookies. You are single-handedly powering this broadcast. All right. That's exactly what I like hearing. First-hand accounts of normalcy. Let's take another track. When we come back, I'll check the wires again. Something tells me we're due for an update soon. 1:22 p.m. And we're back. Time is 1:22. I've got the muted newsroom monitor on in front of me, and one thing is very clear. The anchors are stalling. They're filling time, which is what you do when you know a press conference or major update is coming, but hasn't arrived yet. Still nothing officially posted, and I mean nothing. The AP wire hasn't updated in nearly 40 minutes. Reuters is repeating earlier info. Even the mayor's office has stopped tweeting. That's strange. Not ominous, just strange. When things are contained, information flows. When things aren't contained, information pauses. Let's check AP one more time here. Hang on, something just came in. Let me read this carefully. Quote, authorities are responding to a new incident near the 34th Street area involving several individuals displaying similar symptoms to earlier cases. Officials have temporarily halted pedestrian traffic in the vicinity. End quote. All right. That is the first sign of anything new since late morning. And that tells us two things. One, the earlier events were not isolated to this morning. There's at least one more cluster. And two, they are still within Midtown. Still no spread across the city. Not great news, but not the worst case scenario either. What it does tell me is that this situation is not over. Let's take a breath. One track, and then we'll dissect this calmly. 1:31 p.m. It's 1:31, and I've got an update from one of the national networks. They're showing live footage from 34th Street, and police have put up fresh barricades around one of the subway entrances. No running crowds, no sirens blaring, just a lot of officers in reflective vests pushing people back. From what I can see, it looks like they're responding quickly and heavily, which is what you'd expect after the morning they had. Still no numbers, still no cause. But here's the part that jumps out to me. The anchor said, quote, this appears to be a continuation of the same pattern seen earlier today. That's a polite way of saying the same phenomenon is happening again. One cluster this morning is an incident. Two clusters, several hours apart, is a pattern. I'm not jumping to conclusions, but I'd be lying if I said this didn't change the tone. This may not be as contained as they hoped. All right, let's do another track while I gather a few more details. Welcome back, folks. It's 1:36 here at KPRX, and I'm watching multiple things at once now. Wires, muted TV feeds, and a couple official channels. That AP bulletin we got a minute ago is the first sign that the morning's events weren't fully wrapped up. Another incident at 34th Street. Similar symptoms, same kind of behavior. Police have set up new barricades. No panic on the streets. That part is important. People aren't stampeding. They're just listening to instructions and stepping back. But this does mean the situation is evolving. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Earlier today, officials thought this was contained. Now we're seeing at least one more cluster. You can hear my voice. I'm not panicked. I'm not asking you to be, but I want you to understand why my antenna is up. All right, I'm going to keep the music rolling through the afternoon, so we don't let this take over our whole day. But when I see something real, you'll hear it. Let's do another track. 1:44 p.m. It's 1:44. I'm keeping the updates steady, but not overwhelming. Here's what I have now. There's a new bulletin from Reuters. Quote, NYPD is increasing presence around 34th Street and temporarily halting bus traffic in adjacent blocks. No confirmation on the number of affected individuals. End quote. That's consistent with what the TV showed earlier. They're widening the perimeter. And here's the part that stands out. Halting bus traffic. That's the first time they've shut down surface-level transit as a direct response. That means they want to limit movement through that zone while they sort things out. It doesn't mean it's spreading across the city, but it does mean they're worried about people entering or exiting that immediate area. Still only Midtown. Still no reports from Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, or the rest of Manhattan. Just one very dense square of the biggest city in the country. All right, we've got another local caller. Always good to hear from home. Good afternoon. You're on KPRX? Hey, Mark. What's going on? Oh, your brother works in Midtown? What floor? The 22nd. And they told everyone to stay in the building. Okay. Yes, that matches what we've been seeing. They're asking people to stay inside certain offices just to reduce foot traffic. Did he say anything about what he saw? Just crowds being redirected? Okay. No chaos, just a lot of police tape. Yeah, that sounds right. Thanks for calling, Mark. Tell your brother to stay safe and keep us posted. You hear that? People on the ground saying the same thing as the wires. That gives me confidence we're not being misled or being fed hype. All right, let's drop into a track. I'll scan the CDC site again while it plays. 1:52 p.m. Okay, it's 1:52, and I have something new. And honestly, it's what I've been waiting for. The CDC has finally issued a preliminary notice. This isn't a press conference, just a written advisory, but it's something. I'll read it to you. Quote, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is monitoring reports of acute behavioral disturbances among individuals in the New York metropolitan area. At this time, there is no evidence suggesting airborne contagion or environmental contamination. CDC is in contact with local hospitals to gather clinical data. End quote. That's it. Short, cautious, and exactly how the CDC talks when they know almost nothing. But two phrases matter. 1. No evidence suggesting airborne contagion. That's very good news. 2. Gather clinical data. That means this is now an official medical investigation. No cause given, no guesses, but this is the first moment where the federal level has stepped in. And that's important. All right, let's take this in stride. Another track, then I'll check for local reactions. 2:03 p.m. Welcome back. It's 2:03 here at KPRX. And I have to say, I don't know if it's the coffee kicking in or years of experience talking, but I'm starting to see the shape of this situation. This morning was chaos. Today is analysis. And now we're in the phase where the real story starts to form. I have a new AP update. Let me read it. Quote, patients admitted earlier to Manhattan hospitals are exhibiting prolonged aggression and unresponsiveness to verbal stimuli. Some require full restraints for safety. No toxic agents identified in blood samples. End quote. That's something. Toxicology tests coming back clean eliminates a whole category of explanations. Not drugs, not poisoning, not contaminated food, not a gas leak inside a station. Clean tox results make this stranger. But it doesn't make it supernatural or exotic. There are dozens of neurological conditions that cause sudden violent confusion. Rare seizures, encephalitis, viral reactions, bacterial infections. I'm not going to list them all, but they exist. And I'm sure New York's hospitals are looking at every one of them. Now, the phrase prolonged aggression is concerning, but again, there's a difference between dangerous and mysterious. And so far, this is mysterious. All right, let me check the newsroom monitor. Okay, now that's interesting. They're showing a map of Midtown, with the restricted zones expanding slightly. Maybe 3, 4 blocks. That's not panic. That's containment. But containment usually means the situation is active. We'll know more in a few minutes, I'm sure. Let's keep going. Here comes another track. 2:14 p.m. It's 2:14, and I've got something important. Not dramatic, but important. The mayor of New York is about to give a second briefing. They've placed the podium back on camera, and staff are adjusting microphones. This is earlier than I expected for a second statement, which could mean things are moving quickly. No need to panic. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying officials usually don't speak twice in one day, unless they have something new to clarify. I'll stay live with you as I watch this. As soon as there's substance, you'll hear it. In the meantime, breathe. We're still thousands of miles away, high in the mountains, under a calm sky. Nothing has changed here. And whatever New York is dealing with, they're dealing with it hard. They're focused. They're professional. We'll take this together. I'll speak the moment the mayor steps up. 2:16 p.m. All right, folks, it looks like the mayor is stepping up to the podium now. I'm going to keep my mic open and summarize what he says in real time. Remember, this is still just one city dealing with a highly unusual situation. We are observers here, not participants. He's adjusting the mic. Reporters settling down. Here we go. Pause. All right, the mayor is saying, I'll paraphrase, the city has identified what he calls secondary incidents in the Midtown area. He stresses again that they are still confined to a few blocks, emphasizing few blocks. He says police response is strong and coordinated. All right, now he's mentioning hospitals. Let me listen. Another pause. All right, here's the key part. He says hospitals have admitted a significant number of patients showing similar neurological symptoms to the morning cases. He's calling it a cluster pattern, but also says, and I'm quoting, there is no evidence of rapid citywide spread. That's very specific language. He's explaining that they are advising businesses in a slightly expanded Midtown area to keep employees indoors, if possible. Okay, reporters are asking something now. Brief pause. He's responding. This is important. He says some patients are not responding to sedation as expected. That is unusual. He clarifies that they are not waking up violent. They are simply not calming as easily as anticipated. That suggests, whatever this is, it has a strong neurological profile. Still no cause. Still no identification. Still no mention of contagion. And now he's saying, we are asking residents to avoid non-essential travel into Midtown for the remainder of the day. All right. That is the first time he's extended the advisory beyond workplace employees. Still not citywide. Still not a quarantine. But it's a stronger warning. Reporters are shouting questions. Okay, one reporter asked if the situation is under control. The mayor says, quote, "We are managing an evolving situation." That is a politician's way of saying, not yet. And now he's stepping away. That's it. Brief briefing. 2:22 p.m. All right, let's unpack that. I'll tell you what I think is most significant. 1. Secondary incidents. That means the morning was not a one-off. There are new cases, not hundreds, not thousands, but enough to concern officials. 2. The phrase cluster pattern. That's epidemiology language. It means people in close proximity are developing similar symptoms, or at least that's how it reads. 3. Some patients aren't responding to sedation normally. That's a clinical red flag. And 4. Advising people to avoid Midtown for the rest of the day means they expect things might continue. None of this means the situation is uncontrollable. This is still one area of one city, but we're past the point where they can treat it like a morning blip. And I want to remind everyone, there are 0 reports of similar behavior anywhere else. No Boston, no Chicago, no LA, no Denver, no nothing. This is still New York only, but we may be seeing the beginning of a longer event. All right, let me check the wires again. I'll put on a track while I scan the new updates. 2:30 p.m. Back on KPRX, 2:30. And yes, there is new information. Things are moving quickly now. Here's an AP bulletin that just hit. Quote, one major Manhattan hospital has initiated a temporary lockdown of its emergency department due to unexpectedly high patient influx following the Midtown incidents. End quote. Lockdown of an ER. That doesn't happen lightly. It doesn't mean danger inside. Often it's the opposite. It means they're trying to prevent overcrowding, keep the public out, and stabilize what they have. A lockdown usually means staff-only access. No new walk-ins unless absolutely necessary. Still only one hospital, but the term unexpectedly high influx is doing a lot of work here. And here's a second line from Reuters. These wires are updating every 5 minutes now. Quote, city health officials report patients are not declining, but also not regaining normal mental function. End quote. Not declining is good, not regaining normal function. That explains the concern. This is sounding less like a temporary episode and more like a condition with a duration. Again, I am not jumping to conclusions, but we have to call things what they are. Whatever is happening in New York is not over. All right, before we keep going, let's take a breath. This is heavy stuff. I'll give you one track, and when we come back, I'll summarize what we know so far. No drama, no speculation. 2:38 p.m. It is 2:38, and here's the latest clear picture as of right now. New York has experienced at least 2 clusters of sudden violent neurological episodes. One this morning, another around 1:30 this afternoon. The affected individuals exhibit confusion, aggression, and disorientation. Toxicology tests so far are normal. Some patients are not responding well to sedation. One major hospital is on temporary lockdown due to volume. Authorities have expanded the restricted zone in Midtown and advised people to avoid the area for the remainder of the day. The CDC is now officially monitoring the situation, but has not issued any major warnings. And again, and I will keep repeating this, There are no reports of similar incidents anywhere else in the country or the world. This is New York only. And while it is serious, it is also focused. That's where we stand. 2:44 p.m. One more update before I take us to a break. This one is from AP. Just hit my screen. Quote, authorities are investigating reports of individuals becoming unresponsive after exhibiting prolonged agitation. Several EMTs describe behavior as unlike any known medical episode. End quote. That last line, unlike any known medical episode, is something. That's the first time we've heard first responders use wording like that. But you know what? EMTs see thousands of medical episodes. When something breaks the mold, they say so. It doesn't mean supernatural. It means unfamiliar. And unfamiliar can still be explained. I'm going to keep following this closely. For now, let's take a track. When we return, we'll talk about what happens next, calmly, responsibly, and without fear. 2:46 p.m. All right, we're back. It's 2:46 on this Thursday afternoon, and things are shifting. Not collapsing, not exploding, but shifting. I've been scanning the wires and watching the newsroom monitor during that last track, and something new just landed. Not from the wires, but from the TV live feed. One of the national networks is showing a video clip that they claim is from about 20 minutes ago near 7th Avenue. I want to be clear. I'm not airing the audio. It's too chaotic. But I can describe what I'm seeing. Police officers surrounding an individual on the ground. Not beating them, not hurting them, restraining them. The person is thrashing hard. 3 officers, maybe 4, struggling to keep them pinned without injuring them. That by itself isn't unheard of. People having seizures or psychological episodes can thrash like that. But what's worrying is this. The anchor said this is the 3rd such video verified today. And all 3 show the same pattern. Sudden collapse, violent thrashing, complete lack of verbal response. And in each case, police seem to be responding, like they're handling something volatile. Still no weapons, still no external threat, still medical behavior, but the frequency is the concern. I'll say it again. This is happening in one of the most crowded places in the country. A cluster of incidents will look dramatic simply because the population density is so high. But even factoring that in, this is a lot. All right, let me get back to the wires. We've got a Reuters alert. 2:49 p.m. Reuters. Manhattan hospitals are reporting that many affected individuals remain highly agitated even under heavy sedation. One hospital spokesperson describes the condition as resistant and unusual. Resistant and unusual. That tracks with what the mayor said earlier. It's unsettling, yes, but it's also something that points strongly to a neurological condition, something affecting the brain's ability to self-regulate. Still no talk of contagion, still no talk of spread, just more cases than expected. And here, I'm seeing an AP update now. Quote, NYPD has declared a city medical emergency for the Midtown area. This is not a citywide emergency and carries no curfew or shelter order. The designation allows rapid resource deployment. End quote. That's the first formal phrase that's bigger than a press release. City medical emergency. That's not nothing. It's not catastrophic, but it's official. Let me tell you what that designation actually means, because some people online will misinterpret it. It does not mean the whole city is locked down. It does not mean the situation is out of control. It means NYPD, EMS, and hospitals can move resources, close streets, reroute ambulances, and coordinate without waiting for bureaucratic permission. In other words, it's a logistical tool. A serious one, yes, but not an apocalyptic one. All right, let me check the CDC site again, and okay, now this is important. 2:53 p.m. The CDC has posted a notice that they will be giving a live briefing at 3:30 Eastern Time. That's 1:30 our time, which means it'll happen in about 37 minutes. That is very fast for the CDC. They usually take hours to prepare statements unless something demands immediate attention. I'm not ringing alarm bells, but when the CDC calls a same-day briefing, you pay attention. And something else. This briefing is listed as including both a CDC director and a representative from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. That tells me where they're focusing. Not lungs, not blood, not contamination. Neurology. This is a brain event, and I say that with caution, not fear. All right, let's breathe for a moment. I'll take us into some music while I pull the rest of the wires together. 3:01 p.m. It is 3:02, and we have a new developing line, this one from the TV monitor, not the wires. One of the Manhattan hospitals, one of the bigger ones, is announcing publicly that they are nearing capacity for emergency neurological cases and are redirecting non-critical patients elsewhere. That might sound dramatic, but I want to emphasize that New York hospitals are huge. Their version of capacity is very different from ours. A hospital here filling up means maybe 8 or 10 people. A Manhattan hospital filling up means dozens and dozens. It does mean the earlier assumption that this morning's cases were isolated is no longer holding. And there it is, another AP line. Quote, NYPD, responding to reports of individuals collapsing near Herald Square. Officials investigating whether the cases are related to earlier incidents. End quote. Herald Square is near the earlier clusters, so this is not citywide. This is not spreading across boroughs. This is still a concentrated hotspot. But the hotspot is not cooling down. I'd describe this as a contained fire that keeps sparking. Not an explosion, not a wildfire, but not smothered. We don't have a cause yet, but we do have a pattern. All right, let's get another track on. I know this is heavy, and I don't want to saturate the whole afternoon with tension. 3:10 p.m. Welcome back. It's 3:10, and if you've been listening for the last hour and a half, you've heard the tone gradually shift. Earlier, we were dealing with a morning crisis that officials believed was contained. Now we're dealing with an afternoon that looks more like an ongoing event. And we're still keeping things in perspective. This is one city, one region, and one cluster. But we are absolutely in uncharted territory. Here's the latest from Reuters. This update is only one sentence, but it's a big one. Quote, some patients are demonstrating what hospital staff describe as continuous motor agitation, even under restraint. End quote. That's very specific and very unusual. That means the individuals aren't just confused or panicked. Their bodies are acting on impulses they can't control. That's squarely neurological. No doubt. And here's another very small, but very telling update from AP. Quote, authorities request video evidence from the public of any unusual behavior observed between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. End quote. That means they are trying to establish a timeline, which means they believe there is a progression. And if there's a progression, there may be a source. Still no indication of spread beyond Midtown, still no cause, but you can hear it. This is no longer a morning blip. Something is happening, and we are just now seeing the early outline of it. All right, I'm going to check for more updates. We're about 20 minutes away from the big CDC briefing. That may be the first time all day we get real clarity. Let's get another track on while we breathe. Folks, it's 3:15 here on KPRX. Normally, I would have already signed off, but the station asked me to stay on air through the afternoon while this New York situation keeps developing. Nothing urgent here at home. Everything in Pine Ridge is perfectly normal, but they wanted to keep a live voice on the mic. So, if you were expecting our usual afternoon programming, we'll get back to that once things settle down. For now, you've got me for a while longer. Now, let's talk about the latest updates. We just received a bulletin from AP. EMS units in Manhattan are reporting significant fatigue as calls increase for individuals exhibiting aggressive neurological symptoms. City officials are requesting backup units from outer boroughs. That's the first sign the system is starting to strain. Also, Reuters reports, authorities are investigating whether earlier affected individuals may have made contact with secondary subjects. That doesn't confirm anything, but it tells us investigators are looking at every angle. Let's take a track while I check more feeds. 3:23 p.m. We're back at 3:23. And yes, things in New York continue to shift. The helicopter footage on the newsroom monitor shows police cordons widening around Midtown, emergency vehicles grouped at intersections. No crowds running, no panic, just a controlled, tense atmosphere. Another AP line. One major Manhattan hospital has initiated a temporary lockdown of its emergency department due to unexpectedly high patient influx. That's significant. Lockdowns don't happen lightly. And Reuters adds, some patients are demonstrating continuous motor agitation, even under restraint. That's not normal. That suggests a strong neurological component. And here's another update. Authorities have expanded the restricted perimeter in Midtown from 8 blocks to 15. 15 blocks? That's a large footprint. But still only Midtown, nothing outside it. Let's take another track before the CDC briefing. 3:32 p.m. It's 3:32. The CDC briefing stream is up and should begin soon. New York's earlier clusters have now been followed by additional incidents this afternoon. EMS fatigue, expanded cordons, hospital strain, nothing yet outside Midtown. We're waiting for hard science now. 3:36 p.m. CDC briefing. The CDC director is stepping up to the podium. I'll translate as she speaks. She says they are monitoring a localized neurological event in New York City. That's the key word, localized. She continues. Individuals exhibit acute agitation, impaired consciousness, and uncoordinated motor behavior. That matches everything we've heard. And now, something important. Testing has ruled out environmental toxins, carbon monoxide, common narcotics, and infectious respiratory pathogens. Environmental causes ruled out. Narcotics ruled out. Airborne pathogens ruled out. That leaves neurological, metabolic, or unknown. She adds, we have no evidence of airborne transmission. And one more line that matters. We are investigating a possible shared trigger among the clusters. That means they think there is a common point. Somewhere. They're not calling this contagious. They're not issuing any national alerts. They're treating it as a highly unusual, tightly localized brain event. She's stepping away now. Very short briefing. 3:43 p.m. All right, here's the big picture. New York is dealing with a neurologically driven crisis focused in Midtown. The affected individuals show severe agitation, confusion, and resistance to sedation. Investigators have ruled out toxins and airborne causes. Transit is partially shut down. Perimeters have widened. Hospitals are strained, but there is still no sign of this happening anywhere else in the country. No other state, no other city. Just one dense slice of Manhattan. We'll keep steady and keep watching. Let's take another track. I'll be right here. 3:45 p.m. We're back here on KPRX. It's 3:45, and the CDC briefing has left us with more clarity, but not necessarily more comfort. Let's walk through what's new. New York is dealing with an ongoing neurological event in Midtown, affecting more people this afternoon than this morning. Transit is disrupted. Hospitals are strained. And authorities have expanded the restricted zone from 8 blocks to 15. But it remains entirely contained to that zone. No evidence of spread outside New York. And again, I'll repeat this until it stops being true. Nothing like this has been reported anywhere else. All right, let's look at the new wires. 3:48 p.m. AP Bulletin. Multiple concurrent episodes reported across several Midtown intersections. That phrase, multiple concurrent episodes, is the clearest sign yet that this is not slowing down. And here's more. Police advising civilians in the immediate area to remain inside buildings until further notice. This lines up with what some of our callers mentioned earlier. Office buildings telling employees not to leave. Not panic, just controlled caution. Another update. Second major hospital approaching capacity for neurological emergency care. That's 2 hospitals. That's significant. Let's take a pause. All right, checking the Reuters feed now. 3:51 p.m. Reuters says NYPD officers are rotating emergency response teams due to fatigue as the situation persists into the afternoon. That tells me this has been steady, not a spike, not a wave, but a constant stream of new cases. And here's a more detailed line from the same report. Some officers describe affected individuals as showing lack of pain response and no recognition of surroundings. That's not normal for panic or drugs. No pain response is a neurological red flag. But again, and I'm saying this carefully, neurology is vast. There are illnesses, metabolic triggers, rare conditions, infections, toxins, you name it. This could still have a medical explanation. 3:54 p.m. We also have the first signs of strain in the public. The newsroom monitor shows pockets of people gathering at intersections trying to understand what's going on. Not crowds running, not chaos, but people stopping, watching, recording, and that's how rumors start. That's how misinformation spreads. So if you've got family in New York texting you wild things they've seen online, remind them, and yourself, to rely on official sources. All right, let me check the local caller queue. We've got one from a listener whose daughter lives in Manhattan. Let's take it. 3:55 p.m. Caller segment. Good afternoon. You're on KPRX. Oh, hey Linda. Yep, I see you're calling again. What's going on? Oh, your daughter's in Midtown? On 38th? Okay. What did she tell you? She says the building staff asked everyone to stay indoors until further notice. Mm-hmm. And she can hear sirens every few minutes. That tracks with what we're hearing. She's not scared? Good. Good. Staying calm. That's important. And she's staying put? Okay. That's perfect. Tell her she's doing exactly what the city wants her to do. Thanks for calling, Linda. We're with you. 3:58 p.m. See, that's what I'm talking about. Real people, calm people, making good decisions in a weird situation. All right, back to the wires. 3:59 p.m. Oh, here's an important one. AP. Authorities confirm that some individuals affected in the morning incidents have shown worsening neurological deterioration throughout the day. That word, deterioration, that's the first time we've heard it. And it changes the picture. This is not just sudden agitation. This is a progression. And AP adds, patients remain non-responsive to sedation and show continued motor agitation. That's not typical. Not even for severe neurological events. This is something different. But I'm not jumping to conclusions. We need evidence. And so far, evidence points to an unusual localized medical emergency, not a nationwide threat. 4:03 p.m. Checking the newsroom monitor again. The major news networks are now running uninterrupted coverage. That usually happens when they expect a long evening. And now I'm seeing this line on the ticker. New York City Transit considers limited suspension of additional subway lines. That's appropriate. If you can't control the streets, you control movement. This is containment, not collapse. We need to keep our language measured. 4:06 p.m. And here's something from Reuters. Some office towers in Midtown have activated internal security protocols limiting floor-to-floor movement. Wow, that's rare. Not lockdowns, just movement restrictions inside tall buildings. That means they're trying to keep people away from affected areas in case something happens on the street level. This is still entirely Manhattan Midtown. Not even all of Manhattan, just the densest part of it. All right, let me check for any tests or lab results. Oh, here we go. 4:09 p.m. AP. Preliminary blood panels on several individuals show abnormalities in markers associated with acute neuroinflammation. That's heavy medical terminology, but I'll translate. It means their brains are inflamed. And that is a real condition. A dangerous one, but not unprecedented. It can cause confusion, agitation, seizures, and loss of motor control. This does not automatically indicate something contagious. It does indicate that this is serious. All right, Let's take just a moment. 4:12 p.m. Here's what we know now. More people in Midtown are affected. Hospitals are nearing capacity. NYPD is physically exhausted. Transit is shutting down. Blood tests show neuroinflammatory markers, and patient conditions are deteriorating. But this is still only New York. No other city, no other state, nothing spreading outward. And as intense as this is, it's a contained medical emergency. I'm staying on air as long as we need to. More music and more updates in a couple of minutes. 4:15 p.m. We're back on KPRX. It's 4:15, and the situation in New York continues to evolve. Let's take this slowly and clearly. New York's emergency services are stretched thin. 2 major hospitals are at neurological capacity. Transit lines are being suspended. Blood panels are showing signs of acute neuroinflammation, which is serious, but still medical and still explainable. And everything is still contained to Manhattan Midtown. All right, here's what's new. 4:17 p.m. AP, NYPD issues official do not enter advisory for Midtown unless absolutely necessary. That is the strongest language we've seen from the city today. It's not a curfew. It's not a shelter in place. It's simply don't go there. Given what they're dealing with, that seems prudent. And another line. Hospitals advise citizens with non-emergency conditions to seek care outside Midtown. That means they're prioritizing neurological cases. This is what medical systems do when they triage. 4:19 p.m. Reuters now reporting. Transit Authority halts service on select subway lines indefinitely while emergency crews secure stations. Indefinitely could mean an hour or the whole night, but halting subways, that's rare. And here's a detail, one that caught my attention. Police have begun restricting private vehicle access to several Midtown streets. That's new. This morning it was foot traffic. This afternoon it's now also cars. They're preventing entry, not forcing anyone out. This is consistent with containment. 4:22 p.m. All right, I'm seeing a flashed line from one of the network tickers. Unconfirmed reports of an isolated incident in Brooklyn under investigation. Let me be absolutely clear. This is unconfirmed. Nothing from AP, nothing from Reuters, nothing from the mayor's office, nothing from the CDC. This might be a misinterpretation, a rumor, or a completely unrelated medical event. So we're not treating that as fact. I'll wait for official verification before repeating anything more. 4:24 p.m. Back to verified info. A P. Several Midtown buildings have instructed employees to remain on their floors to minimize movement. That lines up with what a caller told us earlier, and with what the mayor hinted at during his second briefing. It also suggests authorities expect the situation to continue through the evening. And here's something from the governor's office. State health officials request civilians avoid filming emergency responders as they work. That means video recording is interfering with care. And in a crowd-heavy city, that's not surprising. 4:27 p.m. All right, taking a breath here. Evening rush hour is beginning on the East Coast. Millions of people are moving around, or trying to, and transit closures will make that chaotic. Here's another Reuters line. Outer boroughs experiencing significant traffic buildup as commuters avoid midtown routes. That's predictable. When you close a major section of Manhattan, pressure spills outward. But there's no sign of any medical cases outside Midtown at this time. I'll keep repeating that because it matters. 4:29 p.m. I'm scanning the newsroom monitor, and they're showing a street-level clip from Midtown. It shows police guiding groups of civilians into nearby buildings, apparently for safety. People aren't panicking. They're confused, but cooperative. No running, no screaming, just controlled movement. That's what professional crisis management looks like. 4:31 p.m. We've got another AP bulletin. This one is short but packed. Authorities report that some individuals affected this afternoon were not present in the original morning incident zones. That is noteworthy. It doesn't mean spread. It could mean people traveled through the area earlier. It could mean a shared exposure source. It could mean nothing. But it is new. And AP adds, city officials are mapping movement patterns to identify overlap. That's contact tracing. Classic epidemiological procedure. Again, this does not confirm an illness. Contact tracing is used for chemical exposure, food poisoning, neurological outbreaks, everything. But it shows they're thinking in that direction. 4:34 p.m. Another Reuters line. These are coming in fast now. Several EMTs describe patients as exhibiting fixed gaze, unresponsiveness to verbal cues, and abrupt physical outbursts. That's frightening behavior for first responders. And some responders injured during restraint attempts. That's not good. But again, no fatalities reported. That matters. 4:37 p.m. All right, let's pivot for a moment. I've gotten a handful of emails asking whether this has ever happened before. The answer is, not exactly like this. Not that we know of, but sudden neurological events affecting groups of people have happened. Mass psychogenic reactions, toxin exposures, infectious encephalitis clusters, even rare viral outbreaks. These things do occur. This is unusual, not impossible. And so far, nothing suggests it is unmanageable outside Midtown. 4:40 p.m. Let me check the wires again. Oh, here's a big one. AP, New York City issues localized emergency medical alert for Manhattan District 5. That is not citywide. It is not a public alarm. It is a medical alert designation used for hospital coordination. It lets hospitals share data, reroute ambulances, and shift resources. Think of it as a hospital-level emergency, not a public safety one. But still, this is the first time today an alert level has formally changed. 4:42 p.m. I'm also seeing this small but notable line. CDC dispatches rapid assessment team to New York. That means boots on the ground, and that's the most concrete thing we've heard all day. When the CDC sends people physically, especially neurological specialists, it means they aren't satisfied with remote data. And that implies complexity. 4:44 p.m. Let me summarize where we are now. Midtown Manhattan is experiencing ongoing neurological events. The affected area has grown slightly. Hospitals are strained. Transit is disrupted. Authorities are actively containing movement. No confirmed spread outside Midtown. None. CDC says it is not airborne. Toxins are ruled out. Cause unknown. And yes, we may be seeing the early outline of something larger. But we do not know that yet. We stay steady. We stay factual. We stay calm. More music. Updates when I return.